Hey, so today I released a video of me playing a game against Mathias from my club, and we were in the friendly local game store where we had set up, and there was a whole bunch of other people. We were all training for the Sealand Open, which is coming up in less than a month, and so I was basically there because I'm going to TO, so I wasn't there to train. But I had brought my partisans just in order for me to train with my partisans and then to give feedback to other people. I was like looking at people's lists. I was walking around being a little bit of a encyclopedia of people just asking me stuff about the rules and stuff. So, but I got to play two games. So that was nice. But if you go, I'll link the other video that I'm releasing today as well. The video of the game itself. That will be linked in the description for this one, because this is my analysis of that game. So you can go and watch the video. It's not that long, an hour and a half, I think, because 750, and it goes fairly quickly. And I'm a quick player. Mathias is not a slow player at all, so it went quickly. So I think two videos for this is okay, maybe. Right, I'm going to show you, because I of course made a little PowerPoint about this, right? How could I not? I mean, so this is my game analysis of me versus Mathias at 750. So the players is, if we look at that isolated, right? I think we can say, like, safely a top player. Other top players have continually rated me in the top five. So like they would on a 1 to 5 scale rate me a 5. I've ended up in the top 5 of every single WTC I've attended. I've attended them all. I am formerly the national champion of Denmark. The last couple of tournaments I went to with my Brits. Partisans is a little bit of a different story. I'm still learning that army, but I've always taken metal when I went to tournaments with Brits for the last many years. So I can safely say that I'm a top-ish player, right? Even though that is, of course, highly subjective. What is a top player? But I'm learning to play partisans. Partisans for me is a new army, especially the cavalry of the partisans that I'm using is a lot more finicky than you might think, and it's very different. And there are a lot of elements that I don't usually use in my armies that I'm employing in the partisan list that I don't usually have in British lists, so it plays a lot differently. So I'm learning to play them. Mathias, on the other hand, is what I would term a medium player-ish. He is in my club. We've been training back and forth, him and I, and the rest of the club. He has we sort of sometimes like grab someone from the pool of competitive players and say, do you want to be trained up, and we think we can do something with you. And Mathias was one of those, our partisans, with a little bit of Jedi terminology there. And Mathias usually plays Germans, but he's learning to play Brits because Germans, well, they haven't really brought him the results yet that he wanted, right? He typically ends up in the middle of tournaments. He has sometimes played against really good players and done well, but typically he'll end up in the middle of tournaments. So he hasn't really gotten the high-end results that he typically would want yet. Not a lot of them anyways. So yeah, so he's learning to play Brits, and this was a learning game for both of us. The lists themselves, they were more or less this, and you can go and watch the video. We actually talked through our armies and try to show them, but the cameras, I maybe need to get a better camera or camera angle. It wasn't great. We couldn't see all the tables. Sorry about that. So the lists themselves, I had an inexperienced lieutenant with an extra man. They were mounted. I have 3 8-man cavalry units, regulars, and that was because I felt like at low points costs, being mobile is really beneficial, and a lot of the missions for Zealand Open for the 750 points games are actually also beneficial for mobile lists. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go all mobile here. And that worked out well in my two games. I enjoy playing cavalry. It's difficult, and sometimes you sacrifice them, but I enjoy playing them. I also had two 7-man regular late war veterans with double SMGs and a single Faust in each unit. These were my backbone of the army. They were going to go into an area of terrain and just sit there, go on ambush, threaten away enemy tanks with their Panzerfaust. They did this in both games and worked out brilliantly. I also had a inexperienced Lighthouser and inexperienced medium mortar. These were going to be my HE shots, and a regular flamer team, regular bazooka team, regular sniper team, and a car for that. Matthias, on the other hand, had brought two inexperienced lieutenants, so he was already building double platoon at 750 because he wanted to have two platoons with the option of bringing in extra dudes. I think, though, on reflection, maybe he didn't really need that, but it's important for him to go into double platoons for his 1250 list, so I guess that's why he did it. Double inexperienced lieutenant, double 5-man engineers with flamers, double 7-man Gurkha units, he had up and Adam, a darker steward, an inexperienced medium mortar, and an AT rifle. Those were the lists. So, plans. I think, and Mathias said so afterwards, that he was playing for a draw. He had requested the game, and when we got to the table and we played the game, and afterwards he said to me that he wanted to play a game against me because he wanted feedback on how he was using his Gurkhas. And this, by the way, is part of the feedback that I'm giving him. He wanted feedback on how he was using his army, his Gurkhas. Was there something he could improve? So he goes into the game knowing that I am a better player. He has never won against me. Knowing that this is going to be a struggle. And he tries to get a draw. He even signals this to me in the game. I knew that he was doing this because he reserved his Brengineers. And I know that if you're going to have success with that army there, you're going to have to push as much of it in as early as possible to get the different parts of the army to cover each other and work together. Now, reserving those Brengineers means that he wants to be able to push them in somewhere and counter something. If you're already playing to counter something, then you're playing to deliver a second strike, right? You're going to punish the opponent for any assaults that they make. You're going to try and make this a static game, as static as possible. So his reserves to me, when we were standing there and he said, well, I'm reserving this, I already thought, okay, so he's playing for a draw. That signal was very, very clear, at least in my head. My plan, though, was I knew it was going to be a struggle. If he was playing for a draw, I knew it was going to be really difficult for me to get a win. But there was a couple of chances. One of them was I had a really good place where my sniper could go. My sniper could sit in a central forest where he could see most of Matthias's back line. And Mathias had an AT rifle and a inexperienced medium mortar. Both of these were perfect targets for my sniper, right? He also had two lieutenants, also perfect targets. So if my sniper could sit there and try to take out some of these, that would give me the win. So that was one thing. That was one part of my plan. The other part was to get my HE. I had an inexperienced medium mortar and I had an inexperienced howitzers. To get that to shoot and maybe potentially, hopefully, I haven't been lucky with these, but hopefully get some hits. Now, there are 6 turns, maybe 7. We played 7. And I could basically shoot every turn except the first because we were using first wave. So that would give me 6 shots on 6s or 5s most of the time, right? Because I'm trying to zero in every single time. So all I needed was for them to be in a position where I would get cover. So I'd place them in hard cover, and I could move them to a place where they could see as many of Matthias's units as possible, so that at least I had something to shoot at every single turn, and then hope and pray for a 6 or like the last and first dice, so a 6 and a 5. I got nothing, but that was my plan. That because with that many turns and double like shooting in, a 6 should have been there at some point, right? Should have got 1 6. I didn't. My alternative was if I needed to get units out of him, and this was something that happened because of his deployment, but also because I had cavalry. I knew my cavalry was very, very mobile. So if it was possible at some point, I could shift the cavalry from one side to the other, find a place where I could break through and break down into his back line and kill something. Maybe take 1 or 2 order dice out of him so that I could get ahead. Because it was, of course, meeting engagement. We were playing kill points. Yeah. That's always difficult against Gurkhas, by the way, and Stuart, especially if that player is going to sit there trying for a draw. Then it turns really difficult. So that was the plan for both Mathias and me. So, deployment. Now, I'm going to start with Matthias's deployment here, because I think he made a couple of mistakes, and he has asked me to actually like give him feedback on this. So I'm not crapping on Mathias at all. But Mathias spreads out. So we had this table here. You can see that there was some rough ground here up at the end where the beach was. We ruled that the water was rough ground. Didn't matter for me. I mean, cavalry can still move 9 inches in rough ground, so I didn't care. But he spreads out quite a lot. He puts down 2 lieutenants up here. He puts down his steward and his medium mortar here in the center. He puts his Gurkhas way over here on the other flank. So he spreads out. I think that's a massive mistake against cavalry. I really think it's a massive mistake. Yeah, he had reserves, which is the one thing that was going to like force my cav to just wait a sec and see if I could bring out the reserves somewhere. But spreading out against cavalry that's so mobile is going to make openings for the opponent. It's going to mean that the opponent can potentially get their cavalry in somewhere along the line because the units couldn't really support each other. Now, the Gurkhas here were going up against a village of 3 buildings and a couple of fences and stuff like that. I knew I could stop them. So I think they were also potentially deployed wrong. Especially because they didn't have any support. They might have been able to go up and kill 1 or 2 of my units, but they were always going to suffer for it because I was going to sit in those houses or behind linear obstacles. So I was going to get defensive fire, and I was going to at least fight simultaneously. So it wasn't good, right? The steward and the mortar in the center, that placement of the steward, that is because he countered my sniper, which was here in this forest over here. He drove up. He knew the sniper was a problem, so he dark-headed and rolled that 7, killed it. Nothing I could do about that. I think, though, that being placed where they are, where there were houses down here, forest here, he had very, very limited line of sights with his steward, and because I had a bazooka team in my list, he was very quickly locked down, couldn't really move. The same can be said for his mortar. That also had very limited sight. So I think both of them were actually in the wrong location, as were the lieutenants over here. They were horribly alone, and Mathias actually figured this out very early on, ended up pulling some of the reserves down there, because otherwise I would just have pushed down one of my cavalry units and killed them in close combat. I would just have rushed out through the water here and around these small islands and just gone down and killed them. So he had to do something. So I actually think that most of his deployment was wrong. I think he should have pulled a lot more together. He should have had his units together where they could support each other, where they could do different things. As they were, I was able to counter each bit, so he couldn't really move up. He could still survive though, and that was the main problem for me. But the Gurkha handling, I think, was off. He unsupported started by pushing up against the flank. As soon as he figured out that he was going to go in, because I had my 2 regular units, I had a flamethrower, I had my lieutenant just sitting there waiting, going on ambush. And then, by the way, this is the houses. You can see one of the houses here, right in my head, I guess. And I had my howitzer standing, looking down right through this village here. So he was pretty. It was a stretch getting into that village, right? He was going to run into 14 regulars shooting at him and fighting simultaneously with him, backed up by a flamethrower that could go up and kill any of the Gurkha units that were pinned and like. So in the end, he pushes up a little bit. This takes a couple of turns, and then he retreats, tries to retreat all the way into the center, and do a little bit of charging there, because at that point some of my cav was in his center. He never got to do anything. There was 0 Gurkha charges during the whole game. So no, that, I mean, they need a little bit of support, the Gurkhas, and they need to be in a place where they can jump from line of sight blocking terrain to line of sight blocking terrain. They had no effect here. So units with LMGs or MMGs that can shoot and then make a unit go down, and then you can charge it. That's the way to handle Gurkhas. That's the way to use your Gurkhas. Not push them up unsupported. That will never really work. The steward, the central placement, I don't think was necessarily bad. I just think the rest of his army should have been there as well. And it ended up with him not being able to push. If you can see here, these 2 blobs on this very poor picture here, that's my bazooka team. He couldn't move up. I was just sitting there every single turn. That's a 50-point, 60-point bazooka, shotting down a Dhaka steward. It couldn't move. It had no targets. And actually, because he was on ambush, he very quickly each turn went on ambush, and I was just waiting for the last dice of in my army before I did something with the bazooka, because I wanted him to not do anything. So he was on ambush, and I pushed unit after unit across here, across this gap, which he could see, but he didn't want to fire because there was a bazooka sitting there waiting. If he shot at me, the bazooka would move up and shoot at him. So he never shot, and I could just push my cavalry past that gap, and he was completely locked down. So to shoot or not to shoot, I think he should have shot way before. I think he should have done something differently. I think he should have been in this area terrain here. That is where he should have moved up, sitting on the edge, poking out his machine guns of that edge, and then everything that came into line of sight he should have shot. That would have meant that my bazooka had moved, soft cover, potentially long range. I would only be hitting on a 6. Next turn, he might get the first dice, shoot me again, and my bazooka team would go down or die. So I think the steward should have been in a different location. I think it should have been where it could get cover. It couldn't where it was. His reserves, though, that was interesting, because I had pushed up one of my cavalry units over here, and I did that because Mathias brought in a Bren up here, and then that was at the end of turn 2, I guess, which meant that I poked out one of my cavalry dudes so I could just see the Bren carrier, and I knew if I could get the first order dice I would charge, which I did. I charged, I killed his engineers, and now he had a problem because I knew that this was potentially a one-to-one trade, right? That my cavalry would die, but at least I'd taken out his engineers. And if he didn't do something now, if he didn't do something, then I was in his back lines and I would be taking the Bren carrier that they were in, and I'd potentially be moving out into the water to get his lieutenants. So he was in a fix. He needed to pull in reserves to counter that cavalry unit. Fortunately for me, he fails the roll to bring in his second Brengineers. Then he makes it with the AT rifle, but that's not enough. It's just enough to keep the Bren gun, the Bren carrier alive, and give me an extra pin, which was enough for me not to charge the next turn. But you can see I'm trading 1-to-1, but I'm setting myself up for potentially taking quite a lot more, and he needs to stop me now. Now he can't push that second Bren gun in to support his Gurkhas. He can't push it in to support his steward. He needs to stop me there, otherwise I am taking the win. So this was a calculated risk on my part, where I'm sacrificing that one unit in a 1-to-1 trade, and then hoping that he'll make a mistake, or that he will use his extra resources over there where they are no use, because they're off like to a side, can't really influence the game. As I already talked about, my chances for this game was the sniper, which unfortunately got killed by the Darker Steward, but imagine he's right here where my cursor is right now. That is a perfect placement. Look, I could see all the way over here, I could see all the way over there, I could see most of Mathias's back line from that placement. Perfect placement. If I had any shots, if this Darker Steward just didn't wipe me off the board, that would have been great. Didn't. My HE was placed here and then here, so both of them in hard cover. Both of them had line of sight down to where the Bren carriers were and over to where the Gurkhas were. So every single turn I had my shots going off. 2 HE shots, 5 turns, 10 order dice, and not a single 6. Not a 1. And then the final one was where my cavalry tried to rush his back lines. I brought my cavalry over, like crossed all these paths here in a couple of turns, and then charged down here. You can basically see my cav setting up for that. No, the cav up here is already dead. My 2 other cav units are setting up to go and kill this. You can see here Mathias had brought in his second Bren carrier. He did that turn 3 or 4, all the way in the flank, and I knew by then it was not going to have any effect on the game. It didn't. It really did not. So these here cav are just lurking here to see if I can at some point maybe jump down and spread out enough that I take these 2 empty universal carriers here, Bren carriers. Didn't really happen, but it could have. Now, did I make mistakes? Yes, I absolutely did. Still learning the partisans. One, I forgot to deploy my bombs. That was dumb. Well, he was never moving up anyway, so it had very little effect on the game. But I should always remember to deploy my bombs. It's very, very important. I think also I should have deployed all my cavalry in the center so that I could shift flanks quicker than what I ended up doing. Because it ended up taking me 2 turns to shift from one flank to the other. So I should have shifted that cav a little bit earlier. And then maybe you can tell me, do you think the sniper, placing that sniper there where I was opening myself up for shots with the Darker Steward. But at the same time, I really didn't mind that the Steward went where it went because my bazooka team could shut him down. Was it a mistake? It meant that I was 1 dice down very early in the game. And yeah. That dice didn't become important because we were always like, kill 1, lose 1. But I think potentially, looking back on it, that I don't know where I could have placed it where it would have been better. Yeah. So, that was my analysis of the game, Mathias. I hope that you learned something. I hope that the rest of you did as well. Go enjoy the video with the game, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.